Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining this evening. Tonight, we are going to talk about a little bit of rules, and our topic tonight is the 10 must-knows about the rules of golf to shave strokes off your game. If you are playing casually or competitively, it really doesn't matter. If you're keeping track and playing as you would by the rules of golf, and if you're looking to move into a more competitive style of playing, then you should definitely be playing with every opportunity to use the rules of golf as you play. I've just listed 10 of these on here. This is going to help you. We're kind of starting off with a general framework for those of you who aren't yet familiar with all the rules, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into a few more specific ones as we get down there. But for today, we're taking you through a little more baseline and generalized understandings of it, so you can take some of these principles and apply them to some of the other rules that you may come across as you continue to play. So the first thing is, in a 10 must that you have to know is you have to own a rule book and you have to know how to use it. Before anything else, golf, you have to know, or you don't have to know all the rules, but you do have to own a rule book and you have to know how to use it. And what I mean by that is, this is a rule book. And everybody should be carrying one of these in their golf bag. This is the most recent one. And every time they make updates or amendments to the rules, they come out with a new one. I think they come out, I don't want to even guess at this one because I don't know. So I'll just leave it as I'm not sure. But whenever they have new rules, definitely get the new one. Where to get these? You can order them online. From my understanding, you would have to get it from a green grass facility like a golf course. We usually sell these things. You can call them. If not, find it online. But everybody needs to get one of these things, one of these books. Hold it in your bag, because this is the thing that's going to give you all the answers when you need it the most. So when I say own a rule book, yes, first I'll go out and purchase one of these things, but then also know how to use it. In the rules of golf, there is only 24 rules that structure the entire game of golf. And, excuse me one second. So out of the 24 rules, you can have over 1,000 variations of those rules. So your rule book is pretty thin. It is 230 something pages. And they also have another book that you don't need, but when you play an event, the rules officials, they have a book, it's called Book of Decisions. And that's like if you look at it, it's going to be a lot wider book. And it's a book of decisions where any scenario of the specific 24 rules that you could probably imagine is going to be in that book. And so that one's always being updated as well. So when we say know how to use it, yes, you want to know the basic rules of how you're going to navigate your way through the round of golf, but like anything else, it has a table of contents that tells you basically in the first few pages, and it outlines all the different rules in here and headlines. So that's just kind of finding what the rule is. That's one way, but another way is you're going to find definitions and indexes. And out of anything, you would really want to know how to manage your way through the index and the definitions in the back of the book, because that's where you'll find all your answers, right? To figure out which page to look at. And I'll give you an example. If you just think about any type of rule that you might come across, is we hear it a lot when the kids are joking around in our classes is, what if an animal comes out and takes my ball and moves my ball? There's an actual rule that tells you what happens. If you go back and look at the index, you would figure out how to do this, but there's a section in this book, in our book 224 here, that says ball moved. And it also says by what? By an animal, by another player, in stroke play, by any other person, by a caddy, by an opponent in match play. And it kind of gives you a whole list of how your ball could move. And if we were going by an animal picked up my ball and went, you would actually go over, and it says it's rule 9.6 on page 81. So if you're playing on a golf course or in a tournament and you see something crazy, a bird flies down, or a deer or something comes out, coyote comes out and grabs your golf ball, you would say, ball moved, okay, how? By an animal. You look on page 81 here, and it will tell you exactly what happens. So that being said, learn how to use the index and the glossary or the definition. So a lot of times you may hear terms as you're navigating through the rules, or a player might say some kind of term and you don't know, if you don't understand that, you can look it up in the definitions, but it also gives you the page of where it pertains to the specific rule. So if a player, teammate, somebody's giving you a ruling and giving you a definition or a term that you really don't understand, everything that typically is said is in the definitions area. One of the ones actually we have here would be a provisional ball. We'll talk about that later, but if they say, go hit a provisional ball, or you should hit a provisional ball, you would look in the definitions for provisional ball, and it's here on page 216. It tells you what it is, and it tells you the rule that it's associated with, so you can look in the rule book to understand, like, what is the ruling on that. So even if you understand 0 rules and you don't even want to understand the rules, if you just buy a rules book and you understand how to use it, it takes you, almost all the way there. It's even expected when we're going through the PGA program to get your certification to be a PGA professional. There's a rules section. They don't expect you, and in our tests, in our rules test, they don't expect you to know every single rules, but they allow you to take this book here, and they expect you to understand how to use the rules book to find the answers. So the rules are always changing, or not always changing, but in that test, it's constantly changing. They give you variations of it, and all they expect you to do is understand, how can I take this rule book and find out any answer that I'm looking for so I can have the correct ruling on that. So number 1, own a rule book and really understand how to use it. Buy one, kind of browse through it. Definitely not recommended for you to kind of read like a regular book through the stuff that you're going to pick and choose what you want to go and take, bits and pieces at a time. It's also illustrations in the book to kind of show you how to take certain drops and situational based stuff as they're explaining the rules. So it's a really cool book. This one is a new one that's a lot bigger than before. The other one might have been, quarter of the size like this, but didn't have as much illustration. So this one definitely, much better to understand and learn. So for sure, own a rule book. Number 2, excuse me, I just kind of put that heading, the ball just moved. We kind of talked about that earlier, but that's often a case when we're playing, whether it's intentional, accidental, a practice swing. We find ourselves in situations where sometimes the ball moves, or we even, see the ball, somebody else moves. Reason why it's listed here in, shaving some shots off your game is because if you don't understand the intention of how the ball moved, yes, you could get a penalty, but the penalty could either be more severe, or you would find out that it's not a penalty at all. So we'll kind of dive a little bit into this ball move deal here, just because that seems to happen, and a lot of times we just don't know. So the rule of thumb is, once your ball comes to rest, that is the only time you can determine if it has then moved. If it's moving, then it hasn't yet moved. So it's moving from the previous shot. So what we mean by the ball just moved is once your ball comes to a complete stop and then move, that's what we're talking about there. So anytime your ball moves anywhere, you always have to replace it back to its original spot. And if you don't exactly know where it is, you're going to put it in the nearest spot that you believe it was. And when it moves, you're also recreating the lie that it was in as well. So that being said, always replace it no matter what. And then we go to the scenario, how did it move? So if it moves anywhere on the putting green or the tee box before you tee off. So if you teed up and it bumps off the tee, it falls off, or on the putting green, if you accidentally bump it or moved it by any way possible, there's no stroke just so long you replace it. Everything else, every other scenario that your ball could have moved by you intentionally, by yourself, it's going to be a one-shot penalty, right? So from the fairway, you accidentally bump it with your golf club. You then moved it, and then it counts as one, and you have to replace it. If you're setting up your golf ball in the rough and the ball's sitting high on the grass and you address and the ball falls down, it then moved out of its original spot, and then it's a shot penalty, one shot penalty, and then you have to replace it to the lie that it's at. The one part that gets most of us is when it moves, we fail to move it back. And that is where we actually add strokes to your game. So if you're playing by the rules of golf, if you're playing in an event or any kind of tournament that's a lot more formal and it's taken in the USGA rules of golf, that means if you fail to move it back, you get an additional stroke penalty. So then your shot turns from 1 into 2. Even on the putting green where it's free, if you accidentally bump your ball and you fail to move that back, the moment you don't move it back and hit your next one, all of a sudden it's now a second stroke penalty. So always, 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 no matter what, anytime your ball moves, move it back. And it then depends on the scenario, whether it's no penalty at all or if it's a one-stroke penalty. So if you just remember that, then you'll always save yourself on the back end when you feel, if you forget to move that thing back. All right, the next on the list is going to be the drop. It's how, once your ball is either out of play or we're taking some kind of special relief from a situation. And what I mean by out of play is you could hit it in any of the penalty areas. We'll kind of talk about that later, but that would be like the water. It would be into any kind of painted area or stakes that might be red, yellow. And what we're doing, it might be white sometimes if you're white for a boundary marker, or it might be a bad part of the ground that's staked off that you get a free relief or a cart path where you're taking relief from something. And relief just means where you're moving your ball back into play. It's how you drop the ball. So, just how to drop it. You can drop it from as low to the ground as your knee height. And, when we're usually taking relief, or taking the drop, it's usually coming off a bad situation. We just hit it out of bounds, or we've just hit it in the bushes. So what we do, or we're taking into the hazard, we grab a ball out of our bag and we kind of just throw it down this way. We don't even look. Or maybe we know we can drop it from our knee high. We kind of go down and just kind of flip it down this way. Once you drop your ball back in play and it's in play, then your ball is in play and there's nothing you can do to then move it around. So this is kind of where you just need to understand and step back from the situation for a minute and kind of assess the area that you're going to drop it in. So whenever we're dropping it, we're looking, what are we taking relief from, whether it's a penalty area that we'll go into a little bit later, or it's a free relief, a free area that we'll also go into in a little bit. You're kind of always assessing the terrain, the ground, like any kind of trees or anything that might make it more difficult for you to play from. So you can strategically drop this thing in the best lie possible. And a lot of times out of just reactionary things, we just tend to just drop it and then it ends up, and a lot of times it goes into a worse line, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got such bad luck, and it just rolled into the thick grass. But understanding the drop gives you the biggest advantage. We'll spend a little bit of time here because knowing the parameters of where you can drop can actually build a benefit for you. So whenever you're taking relief and attempting to drop, you always have to mark, you always have to mark the area that you're gonna drop it from. So there's always, the first point you always mark is if you can see your ball, you'll mark your original location of your ball. If you can't see it, where it goes into a penalty area like bushes or water, which would be yellow or red, you would mark the point that it crossed into that penalty area. And that would be the significance of like where your ball would be located. You need the starting point because depending on the type of relief you're going to be taking is going to give you different rules. And from there, you either have 1 or 2 club lengths that you can take from that point of entry, depending on the lie or depending on the penalty or the relief that you're taking. But once you measure out where it went in and where your ball is and finding out where's my parameters to drop, you can measure out, in this case, 1 or 2 club lengths, and that gives your window to drop it in. What a lot of us really don't understand in that aspect is the ball just needs to land in that window and it can roll out of it. So the thing that you're looking for is the ball can just not, or just can't be closer to the hole than the original location of where it's at. So when you're dropping in the window, it's gonna then roll out sometimes, or if it rolls in, it can roll up to 2 club lengths out. So again, if you get it dropping in play, it can roll up to 2 of your longest clubs out of the window that you drop it in, just so long it's not closer to the hole. The point that a lot of us make mistakes on, when it drops outside of the window, we then pick it up because we feel that it needs to stay in our window. So we have our markers there of our window, and the moment we pick it up, and if it's within those 2 club lengths, we then give ourselves a 1-shot penalty because we then broke one of the rules that you move the ball that's in play. So if it rolls more than 2 clubs out of the window, or then it goes closer to the hole, you can redrop it. And you can redrop it up to 2 times before you then place it to this specific spot that it dropped into. Also going into the drop, when you're replacing it there, it's gonna be in a specific spot. If you're dropped it twice and you're gonna place it, say you're on a hill and it's rolling out too far, you have to place it in the exact spot that you drop it in. So what you'll find, like a lot of players do, if you ever catch them watching it on TV, on the tour guys, like if they drop in, they know it's going to roll out. They're going to drop it on their second one. They're pretty aware that's going to fall and roll out of their window of 2 club lengths. They'll drop it. As soon as they drop it, they'll point down to where it hit, so they know exactly where they're going to be placing the ball, because that's going to be critical to get it to as close to the precise location. So on that second drop, again, a strategy is, like, if you're just dropping it because you're frustrated with the result, you're actually looking for a nice place for it to drop, because if you drop it a second time and you dropped it like in a divot or a bare lie or something that doesn't look too pleasing, then you have to place it in there. You're not placing it anywhere where it looks nice. You're placing the exact spot that it drops. And finishing up with the drop, you know, we talked about it, you can roll up to 2 club lengths out, but you also have to let it roll the 2 club lengths as well. So even if you know now the ball is going to be rolling out, and you then don't want to walk 5 yards or 10 yards down the hill to pick it up, if you stop the ball as it's rolling within that 2 club lengths, the moment you stop the ball, then you incur another penalty. So a lot of the strokes that you save off your game is just from not accruing additional penalties. So the moment you stop your ball before it rolls outside of your 2 club window, you then incur a 2-shot penalty for breaking the rule of moving a ball or influencing a ball that's in motion. So definitely you get the biggest benefit from the drop, understanding how to get your ball from where you're recovering, or if you're getting a free drop somewhere, to how to place it in the best place that's going to allow me to get back or get into an opportunity situation. So take advantage of the drop, because that's one of the few times you're allowed to pick up your golf ball. And in most cases, you can clean it. Almost every case you can clean it. There's a few that you aren't able to clean your ball, but you can clean it, you can check it. And again, if you lost the ball, then you're pulling out a brand new ball. But that's the only time you have the most control over, like, how to put it back into play. So definitely use the strategies of the drop. We're kind of going through some terms here. So another one is nearest point of relief. Nearest point of relief is kind of exactly what it says. Relief is whenever you're moving your ball from one location to another location, or getting your ball back into play if it's out. So there's a few rules that you'll hear that you have to take nearest point of relief, and 4 and 5 kind of go together because free, you do get free opportunities out there to move your golf ball. And for almost every free type of drop or relief that you're going to be taking, you are taking the nearest point of relief. And what that means is there's only one location that you're able to drop your golf ball. And anytime you're kind of blending in free, it's always one club length. So rule of thumb is going to be typically one club length for anything that's free, and you get 2 club lengths for anything that you have to pay a stroke to. So nearest point of relief is wherever your ball or you're taking release from, there's only one spot that's nearest to your original location or the spot that you mark of where your ball would be to where you're going to take your club lengths. And not to be confused with, the best location. So oftentimes we see this where I'll kind of mention things that are free. Free would be something like a cart path. We would call that an immovable obstruction would be free. So anything that's man-made and you can't like lift up and move. So something like a cart path or a sign that's planted in the ground. Cart path is the most typical one. So oftentimes we take relief from a cart path. The relief that you're taking is the nearest point. So you're always measuring, where you are or where your ball is and figuring out where's the nearest point to that spot. I'll kind of illustrate it here for a second. Let me see if I can get this, just to give you an idea of what this means. So if we go with nearest point, we'll say the hole is out here, and we have a cart path that is running along the hole this way. If we have our golf ball, on, let's say we're going this way, our golf ball is sitting on this side of the cart path. Our nearest point of release to that hole is 100% right there. So it depends on what your lie looks like, right? So you don't always have to take what's free. If you ever watched, make that a little bigger so you can see. So your nearest point would be right there, outside of the cart path. And then you would then get 1 club length, not closer to the hole, anyway back this way. And this is kind of the window that you would drop in. But we often see on TV, when you see PGA professionals, they hit it from the cart path. And they're not doing that to get on ESPN Top 10. They're doing that because their nearest point of relief is worse off than where their ball sits on the cart path. So sometimes there's like bushes over here, and that's your only spot for the nearest point. The moment you pick up your ball, you have to take the relief. So the reason why we said earlier, you want to mark your ball before the drop. You kind of put your marker there or a tee there to reflect where the ball is. Figure out where your options are, because the moment you pick it up, you have to take the relief. You can't go put that thing back. But if this is all bushes, or let's say there's like water right here, right? And there's an area that you can drop it that's inland that may be having you stand in the water. You're going to have to drop it in that thing and then hit it from there. So kind of look at your options. And a lot of times you might see a bad situation here and we'll automatically go on this side just because it looks better. The moment you do that, you just took an incorrect drop, and then you incur a penalty as well. So a lot of this rule stuff comes in where if you do it incorrectly, you incur additional penalties. And that's the one big thing that, understanding the rules is going to get you just not to incur more penalties. So, and understand, how do I make the best situation out of something that could be free, right? So immovable obstructions would be, one opportunity for you to have a free drop and free relief. We also get, if our ball moves, we get to place it back again if it's any other like man-made thing. So this kind of goes back into where the ball moved, right? So we do get free situations, and we'll kind of talk about that, like when the ball moved, right? So we talked about it's typically tee boxes and putting green where if you accidentally hit it, but you also, if it moves, if it's sitting on a, call it an obstruction. Obstruction is any man-made object. So if there's a rake or if there is like a hat, a glove, a shoe, a sock, anything that's man-made on the ground that your ball is sitting on or next to, you do get free relief from that. And if you try and move it and your ball moves, you get to place it back. The only stuff you don't get free relief from would be, we call it loose impediments. Loose impediments is another term. So if you hear that when you're playing an event, you just kind of look it up in this book right here and it tells you all about it, but it's anything that's natural. So stuff like rocks, leaves, branches, those stuff you can move out of the way, but if it influences your ball to move, then it's no longer free. Your ball just moved, you get a one-shot penalty and you got to put it back. So something like free, you want to be able to associate everything that you get for free, right? Ground under repair or abnormal course conditions where ground under repair, where you see it all beaten up on the ground. It's usually painted by white lines that tell you if it's ground under repair. Those are free. So you want to recognize everything that's free. If your ball's in that situation where it's in an abnormal condition where the ground's all beat up or they're planting new grass, take advantage, move your ball out of that bad situation. It's free. Again, nearest point of relief is where you're going. And one of the other free ones that you get is, it goes in abnormal conditions. It's going to be something like standing water. We call it casual water. So anytime there's puddles of water or it's wet where you step on there and water comes out of the ground, that is also free. So if you've ever played in the rain or when it's rained and your ball's sitting in this muddy situation on the ground or even in the bunker, if it's in the water, you can then move it out of that to the nearest point of relief. You just have to keep it in the same situation that you're in. Meaning if you're in the bunker and there's a puddle in there, you can't move it out of the bunker. You got to keep it within the bunker. So know what's free so you don't get messed up by bad situations and take advantage of the stuff that's free. As we kind of move down, we're going to, when we're in doubt. So oftentimes the rules gets confusing and there's a lot of variations of it. Excuse me. And you'll have players that tell you, or people that tell you can do this, you can do that. You could even have a rule book and still be a little bit confused on what should I do. And there's a few different options on there for you. So when in doubt, the rule of thumb is you're always playing a second ball, meaning if we're looking at this situation here, and let's say your ball was, I'll draw it up here, directly in the middle, and this would be kind of weird here, so let me figure out a better. I'm going to create something like this here, where this would be a ground condition, an abnormal ground condition that you get free relief from. And let's just say this is like water here that you're going to get relief from. And if your ball is sitting right here, and you're not quite sure just from how this looks in this direction to the hole, whether to take my drop from here or to take it from back there, and you get people telling you, you have to go from here or you have to go from there. And you just don't know, because it is going to be pretty critical on where you go from, because maybe you see a situation that you really believe it's here because the grass is better here. Over here, it's a little bit more bare, but that's where you got to drop it in back here. And you get people telling you here, you really believe is there. You have the option to do it twice. So you can play two balls to finish out the hole. Do the one you believe that is going to be benefiting you in your situation here, and also do it the way that's being argued back here. And then you play both balls out to finish and you'll have two scores. If both scores are the same, then it doesn't matter which one that you choose, because the score is the same and it won't change anything. But if you score one higher than the other, then it's a big difference, and we'll cover that at the end of the scorecard. But you need to find out with the rules official when you either see them. Typically, you'll be able to bring that up in the clubhouse when you're doing your scorecards, and you'll kind of talk about the situation. You might have to draw it out and explain it to them. And then the rules officiating or officials will be able to tell you, yeah, this is the one you're going to play, or that one is the one that you're going to play, and that's the one that you score. So don't go with just being pressured into what you think. Always, when in doubt, always play 2 balls. So that was number 6. This one here, I kind of wrote it in the wrong order. So we're going to skip over to stroke and distance. That's more of a term as well. So stroke and distance relief means you get a 1-stroke penalty and you gain no distance at all. So that would be equivalent of hitting a ball out of bounds or hitting a ball and losing it. Where if you hit it out of bounds, you have to hit back from the exact location that you were in. So if I hit a tee shot and went out of bounds, it may have went 150 yards or 200 yards, but out of bounds, I don't get to keep that distance. I lose all of that distance, and I'm hitting with a penalty shot, shot number 3, again off the tee. So anytime you hear stroke and distance, that's what that means, because that is the most severe type of relief that you can get, because you gain a penalty shot without getting closer to the hole. The 2 things that they pertain to always, and that's the only option, is going to be out of bounds, and we talked about that. Out of bounds, which is defined by, white stakes or white paint that perimeters typically golf courses. Sometimes you see it bordering holes if they have 2 holes like adjacent to each other, interior on the golf course. But typically you'll see that with perimeters of the golf courses, whether it's ocean or whether it's houses or something that takes you on the street or off the property. So, always stroke and distance, +1 penalty, hitting again from that same location. And then lost ball means when you hit your ball and you lose it and you can't find it, you walk up there, then you have 3 minutes to find your ball. So you hit it in the trees, the grass, the rough is pretty thick. You have 3 minutes to find your ball from once you get to that location. If you're unable to find it, you then have to take relief or take the penalty all the way back from where you last hit it. And if it was a tee box, then you go back to the tee box and hit it again. Reason why I want you to understand this one, because this stroke and distance applies to all of our penalties. Just for our out of bounds and lost balls, that's the only option that you have. There's no other option. As we get into our penalty areas are defined by either yellow or red paint or stakes. And sorry, kind of lost my train of thought here. All right, the yellow or red stakes, I'm sorry. So when we hit it, that's typically a yellow stake is a penalty area that is kind of blocking the course of the hole. So like if we go back to this area here, you'll look at, if we're going from the bottom up as a penalty area, if we see any kind of like water hazard that comes in front of the hole, it's typically yellow. So anything that blocks your way to the hole is most likely yellow. And understanding that, if our tee box is down here, and then we're going that way, if we hit the ball into this water here, I'll just make this a different color, and your ball ends up in the water, might be bushes, but it's defined by yellow. You have 3 options, or actually 2 options only for relief. Your third option is, well, you can always play it from wherever it is. If the water's shallow, you can hit it there, but that's not really taking relief. Or if it's bushes that you find, you can always hit it out. Play where it lies from any penalty area if they allow you to. But as far as taking relief, your 2 options only from any kind of yellow stake is going to be the point that it crossed in. So if it went this way and it crossed in this area here, we always label it with a T, and you can go back as far as you want this way, just so long it's in line with the hole. So any direction from point of entry and the hole backwards. So reason why you want to know this is because a lot of times you just go up here and sometimes it's kind of curving downward into water or to a hazard, we just end up dropping it and we have a really bad lie where sometimes if we step back and relax and we don't react, right? Reacting is typically the worst thing that we always do, especially off a bad situation like this, where we're getting a penalty. You know, we oftentimes just kind of stand back, kind of breathe, kind of survey what's around you, because a lot of times you notice there's a lot of rough here, but then the fairway is just 5 or 10 yards further back. And that might be a much better opportunity because now dropping it back in the fairway versus an unusual line of thick grass up here, even though you might be 5 or 10 yards closer, is going to be significant in how it places you in the next shot. So, you know, thinking things through. So yellow stakes for penalty hazards, your two options is that's one. And your second, we talked about stroke and distance, is always going back and losing all the distance. You're hitting either 3 from the tee box again, or your second option is going back here and then you're dropping it and using our drop rule or a knee high and kind of surveying the area to figure out how to drop it in the best opportunity situation to then make the best of what you have in that situation. The second penalty area that you'll come across is going to be a lateral area, and that's by red stakes. And lateral just kind of means it goes alongside the hole. So you may see something that looks kind of like this, where it might be bushes on this side, and these are typically yellow stakes. And this one, you have very similar options, but again, you always have, even with this yellow stake here, in lateral area, you have stroking distance coming back. You have this option where if, let's say your ball ends up, I'll go green this time so you can see, ends up here, which means my ball then, if I'm going this way, crossed in that location. I have 3, you know, options. So back here's one, stroking distance. The next one is this exact same one. I could go back between this point backwards and drop it. If it's all bushes here, you really don't have that option. If it's something that's like a little creek like this, and there's another fairway on this side, it might be a really good option for you to look back at what does it look like from the fairway. So sometimes there's trees like this on this side, and you're going to be dropping either in the trees here, or you could take this advantage. So knowing this option here, you can go back, jump over the creek, come back in the fairway on this side, and then we have a clean shot going to the hole, possibly. Or your third option that will be added onto this one is you do get 2 club lengths from where it went in. So you get, without being closer to the hole, so I'm going to be angling it downwards, 1 club length, 2 club lengths, and all the way back here, and use your drop, the drop theory that we talked about earlier, to dropping it in this one, in this area here, and again, it can roll 2 club lengths out. So I'll share kind of a story with you guys just at the course that we're at. There's a couple holes that you have this option here where it's on a really steep hill, and you know, taking 2 club lengths, you can use your longest driver. And I see it time and time again that, you know, people hit it in and they're just dropping it right here, and then it rolls out, they drop it again, it rolls out, and you know, eventually somewhere down here it kind of flattens out. But then now they're dropping on this super steep hill where, I mean, it's really steep. I'm hitting it like a baseball, and you just don't have, I mean, it's just not going to be very good. Whereas sometimes 2 club lengths gets you almost to the bottom of the hill, plus an additional 2 club lengths rolling out might even get you to the fairway on the flat ground. So knowing the drop and what you can do with the drop makes like a huge benefit in a scenario that's like this. And I see it time and time again at the course that we're at, that you just go in, you drop it next to there. So always measure, mark where it went in, measure your 2 club lengths just to kind of step back and see. Like if you're not currently marking locations of where your ball went in, where your ball might be on the path, labeling what 2 club lengths look like, and then assessing where should I drop, then you're leaving shots on the table 100% of the time, because it could be getting you closer to the hole in a better space to then recover, as opposed to just saying, I went in again, I'm going to drop it out here and just get it back in there. So that's kind of going with our penalty areas there. Another common one, we'll kind of skip that past the stroking distance now to provisional ball. So provisional ball, again, is a term that is a golf term. And if you play enough, you'll hear people say it. What that means is you're saying that your ball may either be out of bounds or it may be lost. So it's been designed to be more of a pace of play. So if I hit a ball off the tee and it goes 300 yards and it may be out of bounds or it may be lost because the grass is thick and I might not be able to find it in 3 minutes, I can declare saying I'm going to hit a provisional ball. And what that's telling them is if I can't find it, it's going to save me the walk back. And I'll kind of show you back this way again. And we'll kind of design this with now out of bounds. So this is out of bounds here. So you can see, so car path out of bounds here. And if I hit my ball and it now goes this direction, and it could be out of bounds, and this is say 300 yards away, it saves me the trip to walk back and re-tee again. Because if it goes out of bounds or you can't find it, your only option is stroke and distance relief, which means you have to go back to the tee box and hit it again. And I promise you, if you're walking back, however far you hit that ball or any distance, walking backwards, there is a ton of thoughts going in your head to say, I can't believe I did this, I can't believe I did that. And it only gets worse on the way back because now you have the anxiety that your whole group is waiting for you up in the fairway near the green, wherever they're at, and they're waiting for you to get back. And you have nothing else but to start running back. You get self-conscious, and then you start rushing to catch up. And when you get put in that situation, then almost 100% of the time, it's not going to turn out as well as you want it. So take advantage of the provisional ball and just say, I'm going to, oh, also you have to declare that you're hitting a provisional ball too. So if you just say, I'm going to hit another one, that doesn't count. It might count in like your friendly social games, but if you're playing any kind of formal event that's governed by the USGA, then you have to actually say the terms, I am hitting a provisional ball, because if you don't, you automatically are putting the next ball into play. So if I was to hit one out this way and I just said I'm going to hit another one, then I hit that next one and it goes near the green. Even if I found this one, I'm declaring by rule that wherever my shot is not going to be unfit. I'm already saying it's lost or out of bounds. I don't even have the option to look for it, and I have to take the stroke and distance, play from 3, hitting 4 from wherever this is here. So make sure, get really comfortable talking to the people that you're playing with, saying, I am going to hit a provisional ball. And also you would want to declare what kind of ball you're using. And if you haven't yet understood how to identify or mark your golf ball, so let's say I'm playing a Srixon 1 golf ball. And there's only a handful of numbers on there. For me, I have a Srixon 1, and I'll put my own marking on it where I'll put a whatever Sharpie I have or color marker, I'll put a dot next to the number. And, you know, I'll declare my ball in the beginning of the round. So I'm playing a Srixon 1 with a black dot on the right side, and I'll show everybody what my ball looks like. The moment it goes here, I have to put a totally different golf ball in place. Same type of ball. So I might have a Srixon 1, but then if I use the same number, I'll say I'll have 2 dots on here to identify the difference. Because now if you hit it in the same location and you can't identify either of them, then you're not able to play either of them because you don't know if it's your ball or not. So you have to have 2, whenever you're playing a provisional ball, you have to have a clear identification to say, which is my first one versus which is my second one. So the moment you hit that provisional, if you hit it up here, you find this one, it's all good and you can play the ball that you find, only if you declare it. The one big mistake that we see with provisional balls is that we think we can declare provisional anytime it goes crooked or we might not find it. If we were to hit a ball that went this way towards, this is our lateral hazard here, and let's say it went this way and maybe it went in. Maybe there's a ton of trees out here and it's a really good chance that it would have went in there. There is no such thing as a provisional ball for anything other than lost ball and out of bounds. So if there's water here and you say, I'm going to hit a provisional, and you hit that next ball, you're automatically telling the rest of your group and the tournament that I am taking stroking distance because my ball probably went in the water and I'm going to retee from here. So even if you find your ball up here, you're playing the second ball that you put into play. So number one rule provisional balls is you never hit one if it's heading toward any kind of penalty area, any kind of penalty area or hazard. So you just kind of suck it up and go look for it, and you'll determine with your group to whether like it clearly went in or it probably didn't go in and might be lost. But you'll kind of know that when you hit it. So number one rule, no provisional balls around any kind of penalty area, only out of bounds and lost ball. So brings us to our last one. I kind of put stars right by it because it's mainly just for competition and formal scoring. So scorecard is extremely important because there's a few rules when you score keep. And if you're playing, we'll talk about, doesn't matter what type of format you're playing, the player, you're always exchanging scorecards, and you're responsible for your playing partner's scores, and you're never responsible for your own until you're going to sign it and you're checking it. So scorecard is one of the areas that you often see, not often, but you see time and time again. Players, you can either get disqualified for an incorrect scorecard or you get a higher score. And what I mean by that is the number one thing that you're looking for in your scorecard when you're checking it at the end of your tournament, whether it's a 9-hole tournament or 18 holes or round, you are checking the individual total score that's in each hole. So what did I get on hole 1? What did I get on hole 2? What did I get on hole 3? What did I get on hole 4, 5, all the way through to 9. You're not responsible for what the total is. If you're in match play, you're not responsible for like what it checked in for who won the match. If you scored it wrong, just so long it shows in each box who won which hole. And each of the 9 or 18 holes in that card at the end of the round, that is all that matters. So the way the rule goes about that is if you sign your scorecard, so the scorer or the player always has to sign to validate that their score was kept to the best of their knowledge accurately and honestly. So the moment you sign that, all the responsibility goes on the player who signed the scorecard, who says, this is my score. So if you sign for a lower score than what you had, so for example, if you actually if you made a 5 on a hole and you wrote 4 in there, you would get disqualified the moment you turn that card in. So anytime you sign for a lower score in the individual box, you could add it up wrong and your 9-hole or your 18-hole total could be lower. That wouldn't matter because they'll readjust it and they'll add it up at the end once you turn it in. But individual scores, your lower score gets you disqualified. If you get a higher score, then you keep the higher score. So if you got a 5 on the hole and then you wrote a 6 in there, then you would actually get the 6. And no matter what you do, the moment you turn that in, then you get the higher of the scores. And you see it on tour every so often, once in a while, where people got disqualified for signing incorrect scorecards. And again, it's not intentional that they do it. It's because they're not deliberate about checking their scores. I remember a situation, I believe Michelle Wee, when she first got on tour, that was one of the big things. She signed for an incorrect scorecard, did pretty well in the event, and she got disqualified. All right, so even the best players in the world, it's not that they can't count. It's the fact that they see totals at the end of 10 matched up, it looks pretty good, and they lose track of their focus of what they're trying to do, and they just kind of sign off of it, send it in, and then, eventually it finds out that the score is off. And you see it the other way. So there's a player that I've seen back in Hawaii where he played in the pro tournaments out there, and kind of laugh about it now, but it's kind of I guess it's not funny if in that situation, but I'm sure he laughs about it now. But again, it's just carelessness is what typically goes to score. So I remember he was playing and I was following the scores, and I saw him, he shot, I want to say 3 or 4 under on the first day. So 69 or 68 on day 1. And then on day 2, he missed a cut on day 2, but on day 2, he had some absurd number where he shot like 130 on day 2 or 125. I can't remember what it was, but it was like 69 or 68 and like 120. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Did he just fall apart? And it comes to find out that he didn't check his card, and he had his 9-hole total in his 18-hole box. So he got like a 36 on hole 18 and turned in his card. And then it got him to shoot like 120 or whatever it might have been. So even like high-level professionals get out there, they get careless. So be very deliberate about your scorecard when you're checking it. Check it hole by hole, because the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get disqualified. And, you know, it never feels great when you get disqualified. So know the rules, because there's rules that get you out there, that get you disqualified from events. We really didn't talk about it too much other than in the scoring. But when you start playing golf, you prepare and train so much, and you put so much time and so much effort that you want it to be worth everything that you got, and to have it all come down to like your scorecard at the end. Because whether you may have had a rough day, or maybe you got overly excited and you want to just get that thing in, and you're not like focused and deliberate on just keeping your score and checking it at the end, just like you would prepare for practicing or preparing to make that last, 10-foot putt to win the golf tournament. I promise you, every person that wins an event, they are in this score situation in the PGA Tour on after hole 72. They are so deliberate on this score and making sure every little detail is on there, because they don't want to mess that up. Because it could mean them winning the tournament, getting a higher score, losing by 1, going to a playoff, or getting disqualified and putting all of their efforts. So treat your scorecard just as every other skill development that you do. Put lots of effort, amount of effort that you put in to training, to practicing, to, being on this call, and just, taking the time to learn, right? We're all putting a lot of effort, and don't throw it away just because it's a score, it looks pretty good, and I'm going to sign it, and, then it's out. So scorecard, especially in your social games, nobody might care too much, but, the moment you get to the higher competitive levels, it is monitored 100%. The higher up you go, the more your scorecard gets monitored. So, condition yourself now to get yourself in a situation to take the time, right? Spend an extra 2-3 minutes, 4 minutes to like look through everything and make sure it's all there. Don't rush through that step. So this is kind of just general guidelines on, we've got some definitions and framework around the rules. In some future sessions, we're going to dive deeper into a little bit more, tactical stuff in like how to take advantage of more of the rules. But like this gets you most of the way here, understanding just general frameworks, what you can get for free, how to drop the ball. Those are 2 big ones. Knowing where to go when you take free stuff, because if it's free, you want to keep it free. When in doubt, play a second ball. It's okay to play another ball. Understand penalty areas and what your options for stroke and distance is. Penalty areas are huge, because when we often play, if we're struggling at all, we're seeing penalty areas more often. And if we understand like our different options, we can actually turn some of those misfortunes into not escalating into worse scenarios. So, ask yourself, when you play, how many times would you have said, man, I would have had the best round if I didn't hit it in the water, if I didn't go in the bushes, if I didn't do this, right? Because that caused me to make this astronomically high score. You can think, was there any scenario that I failed to kind of look at the conditions around, and maybe that 1-shot penalty may have only cost me a bogey on this hole, or maybe even could have got lucky and got it up and made a par, or maybe that quadruple that you had may have just been a double bogey, right? So definitely there are so many shots to be found just in the rules of golf. If you understand it, right, you can take advantage. Most of us kind of just look at the rules and say, well, I really don't got to know until I break something or until it happens. But if you take that, precautionary look and say, like, look at it in terms of how can the rules benefit me, then you come out with a mindset on looking at all these details on things that come across in your daily rounds, in your competitive rounds, to then see like, oh, how could I have made it better here? Could I have dropped it better? Or did I forget about taking this free relief? Now I know it's free. If you understand that stuff, then it's golden. Every 1 or 2 shots that you can save, I mean, there's always shots to be found or gained somewhere by learning the rules. So thank you very much for being here. I will leave it open for a few minutes for Q&As if you guys have any questions. Let's see real quick. So sorry, I'm going to shift up on this side. Annie had asked, last time my ball just fell off the tee, the other girl says it was a penalty. I don't know what to do. Well, I did not know what to do, so I just got the penalty because majority rules. It's not supposed to be a penalty, right? Yes. So if we understand what was free, right, no matter what they say, you would say this is a free relief. I get to put it back on the tee. But again, it depends too. So if it was accidental, then it's no penalty. If it was intentional, meaning you're trying to swing it and you're actually trying to hit it and you hit the ground or you miss it and it bumps off, then it counts. And you could re-tee it, but it's a penalty to put it back on the tee, or you would hit it from 2 from the ground. So yes, if we had a session earlier on confidence too. So if you know the rules, you're definitely more confident playing the game, because you can take misfortunes that happen out there and quickly turn them into opportunity moments just by being super confident and knowing like, oh, I know the rules here. There's a benefit to be gained. It's not the end of the world for me to go in the water. It's not the end of the world for me to do this and the hazard. So definitely know that. And in any situation here, being confident and understanding the rules will then get her to say, or get yourself to say like, no, it's not, because the rules of golf say if it falls off the tee, or if it moves on the tee box or on the putting green, there's no penalty. I just have to put it back on, and then done, right? So know the rules. Ever a question? Again, if you're not confident and you don't know, then we go to, when in doubt, play a second ball. So in that case, you really didn't have to play a second ball because you re-teed it. You would either get a 1-shot penalty and hit 3 off the tee, and you would just go into the clubhouse and say, well, we have a ruling here, talk to the rules official, and then they'll tell you like, I really believe that on the tee, if it's not intentional and it falls off, I get to tee it up for free at no penalty. My playing competitor says it's a penalty. Can you let me know the ruling? And whatever they tell you is what it's going to go. So they'll listen to the scenario of what happened, and then they'll make their judgment call. Again, it's scenario based, so depending how you do it, the rules officials, I've heard in times that they've been a little off sometimes, but whatever they say is what goes for that particular day. So be really confident so you can then understand the rules and play. And also, if you have a rules book, you just bust this thing out and say, well, look at in the back in our index, and it says ball move. I remember we said that. And you find like in this index, where is it moving, right? And it'll tell you, and you look it up in here, and it's going to tell you moving on the tee box. If it's unintentional, no penalty at all. So if you have a rules book, then that's where you go from there. Just know how to use it. We have another one. I believe this is from cool emojis here, Amy. If I swing in the bunker, not touching the ball or sand, it moved by itself, it was on a tilt, what do I do? So that is an interesting question there. So it depends. So we have that like decision book, right, where you have over 1,000 variations of like these 24 rules here. If you caused it to move, then it's a penalty, whether you hit it or not. So let's say you're taking swings and your feet is interrupting the ground and it causes it to move, that's on you. If you're swinging it close to the ball and like the wind from your club pushes the ball and moves it on that slope, it's on you. If you didn't cause it to move and it just rolls off the thing, then you just have to put it back. So the moment it stops, that's kind of what you do. So it really depends. If you cause it to move, it's always a penalty, other than putting green and tee box. If you didn't cause it to move, typically if it's standing there, you just got to determine like what caused it to move. If you're digging your feet in there, taking practice swings, the rules official is going to tell you 99% of the time. If you're swinging right next to the ball, you dig your feet in there, your footing had interrupted the ball to fall off that thing, and it's going to be a penalty. So that's kind of what that would be in that situation. Amy, does that help? All right, so we have, so kind of going back to Annie. Annie said the other girl did not say penalty. Actually, they said the shot counts. So at a 5, even though it was a 4, like last summer break, I was not on Players Tour yet. Yes. So yeah, again, it just depends on how it moves. So if you had intention of hitting it and it moved, yes, it's a penalty. And they might not have referenced a penalty. They're just going to say, and actually it's not a penalty. If you swung and the thing fell off and you hit it, that's actually like your shot. So you can take relief and put it back in a tee, but that counts as then it counts as a 1-stroke penalty to re-tee it up. But if you play it from the ground, then you're hitting 2 from the ground. So that shot actually counts. So the difference would be you hit 3 back at the tee if you actually made intention, or you hit 2 from the ground. If you made no intention, tee it back up for free. Giselle had asked, what is a white hazard? So in golf, we really don't use the term. That's kind of a new term that has gone away, where we don't really call it hazards. I kind of referenced hazards a little bit just by habit, but they're referring it to more penalty areas these days. So you have penalty areas that are just going to be red and yellow, and they could be water, bushes, but those are the ones that we talked about in penalty areas. White would be a out of bounds boundary marker. So anytime you see white on perimeters of golf courses or interior, perimeters of the hole, then it's going to be a out of bounds. So out of bounds is only going to be stroke in distance. So if you hit it out through the white lines or past it, then you are stroke in distance. Oh, actually brings up another part. So just to let you know, when you look at stroke in distance or boundary markers like white out of bounds, or penalty areas like yellow and red, paint or stakes, the way it's defined is really important too, because for you to be out of bounds, if we have, I'll show it to you really quickly. Sorry, I know I'm a little over on this one, but I'm going to show you on this one because this is really important. If your hole, let's just say the hole is out here, and we're going to call this out of bounds out here. And on this side, we're going to call this a penalty area. So for your ball to be out of bounds, and we're going this way from the tee box, your ball has to be fully out of bounds. So if you can see here, there is no space. This illustration here shows the ball not touching the line. I guess you might not be able to see it. that is out of bounds. If your ball is touching the line at all, like this one, you are in bounds and it's not out of bounds. On the other end, for this one, all your ball needs to be doing is touching the line and you are in the hazard. It does not need to in the penalty area. It does not need to cross fully. So in penalty areas, your ball just needs to be touching. In boundary and out of bounds, it can be touching and you're in. Your ball needs to be fully across for it to be out. So that would be another part that if you don't understand, you might be in bounds and coming back here. If it's touching the line, you might be taking stroke in distance when you don't have to. And I suppose here, if you're touching the line and you break a rule, you may be incurring a penalty there. So that is for your white. So white is always OB, out of bounds. Giselle has another one. Let's say if you hit it and you get close to the green, but it falls into the bushes and you can't find it. I saw there was a drop area you can use in Arroyo. Should I use the drop area instead of the 2 club lengths closer to the hole? So here is an example on that one. So let's say we have bushes behind the hole here. It kind of just depends, and we have a, let's say, drop area right here. Knowing what you, if the event that you're playing or the place that you're playing presents a drop area and they say you can use drop areas if you want, then you can use it. But let's say it just depends. Let's say your ball is back here. You could definitely take 2 club lengths, not closer to the hole, and be closer to the hole and use that situation. Or if this area puts you like in a rough condition, then you would use the drop area over here. In very rare circumstances, when it gets near the green, you'll kind of see like some areas where it goes in and it's kind of curved a certain way and it bends like towards the hole. And it might even be coming like closer like this around the hole, and your ball might enter here. And sometimes you'll find situations that no matter which angle you go, you can't get, you always are dropping closer to the hole. And in that case, you can't just drop it and say there's no place to drop. You just can't use that option and you have to go take your stroke in distance. So again, right, if you take a wrong drop, then it leads to increased penalties, which hitting another ball, you know, definitely gives you another shot. But you're not able to play it from here. You actually have to go back and tee it up, which then leads into disqualification if you're not able to go back and play it correctly. So you hold out with the incorrect score. So use a drop area if it benefits you, but if you know the decisions, then you're just finding the ones that are going to be to your biggest benefit and then making a decision from there. And we'll take this last one here. Am I able to bring a rule book to a tournament, or is that like DQ? It's not DQ. I encourage everybody to buy a rule book and keep it in your golf bag. There's not one professional golfer out there that does not have a rule book in their golf bag. Whether they use it or not, they're always having access to a rule book. So get a rule book, and that's kind of going from number 1, own a rule book, know how to use it, and keep it with you. So a rule book, if you know how to use it, it doesn't do you that much good if you don't have it with you. So the how to use it part is when you're playing on the golf course. So if you come over to certain scenarios, then you're using the rule book to help you navigate through the rules to benefit from it as you play. So yes, 100% get a rule book, keep it in your bag. They're a lot bigger now, so if you can't fit it, it's okay if you like fold it up or do whatever it is. I mean, just as long as you have it, it doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to be effective where you can use it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys.